guys, welcome back to my channel. My name's Maddie. If you're new here, I hope your day is going well. And today, we are going to be doing a tag. I know, it's been a minute. It's been a little bit, I'm not gonna lie. It's been a minute since I've made a tag video. I love tag videos, but if you do them every week, they get a little redundant. And they're tiring content to put up, unfortunately, so I don't do them as much. Not to say that I don't love watching tags, but for me, they're a little bit of a drain on my creative energy, so I don't do them as much, and I kind of wait for ones that I really, really love. The one that I'm doing today, I really fucking love. It is the Out of My Comfort Zone tag created by emmmabooks herself. And she urges you to create a rule and take out one specific, like, your comfort zone, if you will, out of your answers. And I love that. So obviously I have to take out fantasy, which is great and totally fine. So let's go ahead and jump into the questions. The first question is a book that is an exception when it comes to genres or elements in books that you don't typically like. This was actually a really interesting question because when I originally read this book, the elements about it actually would have made me hate it, but somehow it became one of my favorite books. And that book is Vicious by Victoria Schwab. I'm sure some of you are like, no, Maddie, that's your favorite book. You fucking love that book. But the reasons why I honestly thought I was going to hate this book is because of the way the timeline is presented. This book is told from a non-linear timeline that meets in a singular place. And I took a film class a while ago and absolutely fucking hated Memento. And it's a very similar style. I also really didn't like anti-heroes when I read this book. I know. I used to really despise anti-heroes. I used to not be able to really kind of gel with them. And then after reading like Six of Crows, Vicious, Nevernight, pretty much all of my favorite books where anti-heroes are constructed so well, I definitely learned that that is a trope slash characterization type that I bond with really well. But going into Vicious, I had doubts. Serious doubts. Fortunately, Victoria Schwab is a master at writing, so this book and me, we got along quite well. But when I heard about the timeline, I was very, very worried and really didn't think I was gonna like it. But the way this narrative is constructed, it's done so well that it's just mind-blowing how interesting she narrated the novel. I loved it. It was amazing. I recommend it. It was done really well, basically. As you guys can tell, I love this book. It's amazing. Question number 2 is a book you enjoyed from a genre you previously held a stigma about. I wanted to do like the romances that I've read in the last several years. I've loved romance for a while, but I've always kind of felt like it's corny and cheesy. But a genre that I have always held a very just like not like high opinion of, which is really weird, is the like kind of dark contemporary novels. So like Ellen Hopkins, like 13 Reasons Why came out when I was in high school, and when someone told me what that book was about, I was like, that sounds so depressing. Why would you read about that when you could be reading about dragons? But the book that was so amazing, dealing with really intense real-life topics and just exploring characters and really just proving me so fucking wrong, was The Hate U Give by Angie Thomas. This book deals with some crazy, relevant topics right now. This is inspired by the Black Lives Movement, and when I first got a hold of this arc, I was a little nervous going into it. I knew what the subject matter was about, and I wasn't off-put by the subject matter itself, but the genre that this is kind of in wasn't one of my favorites, so I definitely didn't feel like I knew too much about the way this was going to be written. But Angie Thomas, once again, is a fabulous writer, and she took my doubts and just was like, no, you're wrong. And I was entirely wrong. The characters in this are the strongest I've ever seen. The character relationships are really believable. And this book really proved me wrong when it comes to like deep, relevant issues in teen books and the way they can address them, and that they can be done really well and just change the world, because I think this book has been changing the world. It has been on the New York Times bestselling list for like years at this point. It's one of my favorites. I can't wait to see the movie. You gotta read it. I don't care what you think, you have to read this book. Number 3 is pick a book that you didn't know was actually out of your comfort zone until you started reading it. Now, this was kind of a difficult question because I feel like I've had like several books where I'm like, oh, this was more this genre than this genre when I started reading it. Like Into the Drowning Deep by Mira Grant is really more sci-fi than it is fantasy, even though it has mermaids. And there's other books that are like more of one genre than the other, but it's not necessarily that I didn't like them or like felt uncomfortable by them, but a book that I felt like just wasn't what I was expecting and definitely felt a little uncomfortable by was Sadie by Courtney Summers. I feel like this has been all over BookTube and Book Twitter recently. It is basically about a girl named Sadie whose sister is brutally murdered, and Sadie goes off to find her killer, and a man who runs a podcast about missing girls tries to track her down. And the way this is told is from Sadie's perspective, and then also from the podcast, like, narration from the guy who's trying to track her down. And I just feel like the podcast part of it was really cool, but the Sadie narration was just, I don't know, for me, kind of lacking. And I feel like that part of it was the only part that I felt uncomfortable by. I just feel like I wasn't getting the thrill of this story because Sadie knew what she was doing and where she was going, but she wasn't telling the audience, whereas the podcast part of it was really interesting, and I just don't listen to podcasts, so I was thinking maybe that was part of it, but like, I think this is more of the type of thriller that I just don't really gel with, especially with the unsatisfying ending. I didn't love the ending. I don't like it. I felt like it kind of just made me feel like I didn't need to read the book at all. But I'm not here to try and sway your opinion. I enjoyed most of this book, but the Sadie point of views were just not something that I felt like made sense in a thriller novel, basically. Question number 4 is pick a friend or booktuber that motivates you to pick up books that you might not normally be interested in. What is one book out of your norm that they have convinced you to try? Now, I actually have 2 for this because I'm an overachiever, and I'm going to start with the lovely Chelsea Dolling Reads. Chelsea loves contemporary. If you met me, you know I like fantasy. So I still love her channel. If she likes a contemporary novel, I'm pretty sure I'm gonna like it too. I read The Hating Game because of Chelsea Dolling Reads, and I'm pretty sure most of BookTube read The Hating Game because of Chelsea Dolling Reads. And she convinced me to read The Kiss Quotient. And there are so many romance novels that, in all honesty, I probably wouldn't have gotten around to. But if she says a book is amazing and 5 stars, I will probably like it as well. And then the second person that I will be talking about is Emily from Possibly Literate. Emily reads so many different genres and does such a better job at reading literary fiction than I do. So I know that I need to read more literary fiction and nonfiction and just read more genres. But I don't, because I like my fantasy. Emily, off the top of my head, I know that I've read several books because of Emily. I know that my Goodreads TBR is very long because of Emily. I know for a fact that Emily talked about Little Fires Everywhere, and I would definitely have not picked up this book. This is a literary fiction novel about 2 families who live in this very structured suburban neighborhood. One family is very rich, the other one is not, and it is a very interesting look into motherhood. And that is not something I typically reach for. Emily manages to read so many different genres, and it definitely pushes me out of my comfort zone to read things like short story collections or poetry collections or nonfiction or literary fiction that I definitely wouldn't reach for atypically, and I really have to give it to her because she does such a good job with that. Question number 5 is a book that is out of your comfort zone that you would like to read. I didn't answer this in my notes, so that's a problem. A book that's out of my comfort zone that I'm just gonna go with is The Shadow of the Wind by Carlos Ruiz Zafón. I don't really know a whole lot about this, but I'm pretty sure I've heard that it has some whimsy to it. I don't think it's fantasy, so I may be wrong, but I haven't read it, so I can't tell you if I'm wrong or not. But this book has a interesting storyline where it's about a man who finds a library, and I can't really tell if it's literary fiction or not, but it's definitely not something that I would naturally pick up, but I've heard such amazing things from so many different people in my life that I'm pretty sure I'm gonna like it. So I really want to get to it because I've heard such good things by like several people, so I know that I've got to get into it and see what I think, but it is something that I like don't immediately pick up because I'm not positive. I'm not sure. But I'm pretty sure. Like I'm 90% sure I'm gonna love it. And then the last question, question number 6, is a book or genre that you will probably not give a chance or another chance to. And honestly, I really couldn't answer this without being like Christian fiction. Like, I can't really think of a genre or book that specifically is so out of my comfort zone that I wouldn't read again. I definitely don't have issues with certain tropes or things, so I'm not like someone who won't read another genre. Like, a genre that I definitely don't read as much anymore is like teen contemporary romance. But I know that I'm probably gonna read another one at some point. I just don't read as much as before. So I don't really have a good answer for that. So I just get into my fantasy hovel and never leave it. So the biggest thing is I need to expose myself to, what? I need to get myself out of my hovel and read things that are not fantasy novels, basically. All right, guys, that was the out of my comfort zone book tag. I was not oh, hello. Cool. Fucking amazing. Alright guys, that was the out of my comfort zone book tag. I do want to tag a few people, including Chelsea and Emily, but I also want to tag Spencer from Common Spence as well as Stephanie from This Unicorn Reads. I definitely want to see what your guys' reactions are to these questions. I really, really enjoyed this tag. I'm gonna go now, guys. Like, subscribe, all the good stuff. Bye!